Unexplained encounters, 7 spine-chilling camping stories revealed to expose the sinister truth. Sarah had always believed that Grizzly Ridge was a place of magic, but that weekend, as they set up a tent among the towering pines, an unsettling shadow seemed to loom over them. The crackling fire flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the trees, and a shiver crawled down Sarah's spine. She brushed it off as mere nerves brought on by the stress of urban life, but deep down, a primal fear buzzed quietly, urging her to stay alert. "Look, Mom! A deer!" Ben shouted excitedly, pointing to the forest as a slight rustle reached her ears. But there was something wrong. The wind carried hushed whispers through the trees, something indistinct but undeniably eerie. "Just wildlife, sweetie," she said, trying to shake off her unease. She watched as dark crannies formed in the woods, creeping shadows that evoked urban fears, as if the forest held secrets it wasn't ready to share. Night fell swiftly upon them, and the darkness enveloped the campsite. Something crackled in the underbrush. Chilling goosebumps rose on Sarah's arms. Her heart raced. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, eyes darting toward where the noise had come from. "It's just the wind," Dave reassured, though his brow was knit with worry as the sound repeated itself, a dread-filled snap of twigs. Sarah could tell he was just as unsettled. They exchanged glances, unsure if they were just letting their imaginations get the best of them. But as the fire sputtered, shadows elongated into nightmarish forms around them. Before long, they joined a nearby camper sharing tales of the forest's haunted past, lost souls wandering without rest, whispers of families who disappeared without a trace. Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She dismissed it as rumor, yet the locals' nervous glances and hushed words lingered. "Mom, can I go look for more firewood?" Ben's voice broke her thoughts. "Stay close," she called, forcing a smile. The fire crackled, but her heart felt heavy. Hours later, panic gripped her gut. "Ben?" she called, the slightest tremor in her voice as darkness clung to them like a heavy fog. "Where are you?" Dave's voice was steady, but she could hear the fear creeping into his tone. "Maybe he's just playing." "Ben!" The call echoed back, mocking her in the silence. Every rustle became a sinister whisper, shadows reached for her, wrapping dread around her heart. Then, without warning, a figure stepped into the periphery. Just a shadow, no, something more. It was tall, grotesque, moving unnaturally toward the woods. Sarah's breath hitched, fear's cold hand gripped her throat. "Something is out there," she cried. The surrounding trees felt alive, as if they were witnesses to the terror unwinding. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Chilled to the bone, they called out for Ben again. Each word felt like a lifeline thrown into a pitch-black sea. Sinister shapes stirred in the dark, awakening primal instincts she locked away. Something terrible lived in these woods. Her mind raced with gnawing doubt. Could the local legends of families devoured by this forest be true? Every flicker of the dying fire seemed to offer no consolation. The shadows crept closer. What hunted them? What awaited just beyond the light? A chilling realization thundered through her: Ben had vanished. As if the forest had swallowed him whole. No hope, just the looming terror that maybe the thing hunting them had already chosen its prey. What was left? The darkness of Grizzly Ridge loomed deeper, and Sarah, with adrenaline pounding in her ears, felt the weight of fear compress her very being as she prepared herself for the dreadful truth waiting in the shadows. "Ben!" Her voice cracked, desperation mixing with terror. The fire sputtered, sending sparks into the night, dancing like souls trying to escape. Sarah felt her heart pounding in her chest, raw and unyielding. Where could he be? Stay put, we'll find him. Dave's voice was tight, his eyes searching the darkness as if they could pierce through the oppressive shadows. As silence draped over the campsite, each tick of time felt like a slowly tightening noose. Shadows warped and twisted around her, each flicker of light revealing deeper folds of the uncanny. The air was heavy, heavy with an unshakable dread. Then there it was again, a snap, louder now. It felt deliberate. Do you hear that? Sarah whispered, feeling a chill crawl up her spine that even the night's chill couldn't account for. I hear it. Dave breathed, fear lacing his tone. Ben. She screamed again, the word echoed into nothingness. Somewhere deep in those woods, a low growl rumbled, not animalistic, but something worse. It slithered through the trees, a sound that seemed to curl around her, squeezing the air out of her lungs. Let us stick together, Dave urged, stepping closer, hands fisting nervously. Fear was starting to blanket them both, squeezing tighter than the darkness. Right. She nodded, but thought of their son cast a shadow over her resolve. We have to find him, Dave. He wouldn't wander far. They moved cautiously, hearts racing as the forest closed in around them. Each step was submerged in a hushed sense of dread, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. The light of the fire was a thin line behind them, a fragile scream of warmth and safety against the looming night. Do you think he found someone? Maybe another camper? Dave suggested, though the less confident he sounded, the more dark thoughts filled Sarah's mind. I don't know. The woods hushed. Then, a distant voice floated through the trees, a child's laughter. Was it Ben? Ben! They called out simultaneously. They both froze at the sound, heads snapping toward the source, toward the chilling laughter echoing deeper into the woods. That doesn't sound right, Dave said, his face paling. No, it feels wrong. Sarah swallowed hard, her gut churning as the laughter rang out again. It was high and mocking, devoid of innocence, almost like a game being played at her expense. Come on. Sarah pressed forward, driven by fear and love, but deep down, trepidation gnawed at her. Each step took them further from the warmth of the fire, each shadow seemed to cling to their heels tighter, whispering secrets long hidden. The outline of a figure flickered in the distance. It had Ben's height, but something was deeply off. Sarah's heart raced. Ben? She called, dread washing over her, searching for signs of her child. Was it too late? As they approached, the figure turned around, just out of reach. But it wasn't Ben. Not anymore. Hollow eyes, a twisted grin, it stared back at them, an echo of their son. Adrenaline surged. Sarah felt the world tilt. Run! She shouted, grabbing Dave's arm, her instinct screamed at her to escape. They bolted, but the strange laughter followed them, lingering, whispering. The firelight flickered once more behind them, a fading beacon as they plunged deeper through the woods, fear clawing at their backs. It grew colder. The air felt thick. Behind every tree, she felt eyes watching. Where are we going? Dave gasped, panic snapping at him. I don't know. Sarah cried, but we have to find him. But the forest wrapped around them like a vice. As they stumbled, a haunting realization loomed out here, they weren't the ones hunting. They were the prey. Before they could process it, a growl rumbled through the hollow trunks, echoing their worst fears. The thing from the shadows was closing in, and it wouldn't let them leave unscathed. Keep moving. Dave shouted, urgency dancing on terror's edge. But as they ran, Sarah caught a glimpse of something else, a pair of eyes, bright against the dark, piercing right through her. And in that moment, she felt a chilling conviction, the silence of Grizzly Ridge would not be broken. What awaited them around the next bend? Would it lead to Ben or to something far more sinister? They ran deeper into the woods, breathless and desperate, each footfall echoing like a warning thrumming in time with their panicked hearts. Shadows pulsated around them, closing in as if the trees themselves were conspiring to trap them. Sarah dared not look back, but the laughter still danced in the cold air, taunting, circling their minds and urging them deeper into the frightful embrace of the forest. What was that thing? Dave gasped, his eyes wide, haunted. I don't know. Just keep moving. Sarah pressed on, her voice urgent, her pulse a staccato rhythm of fear. They stumbled through the underbrush, branches snagging at their clothes like skeletal hands reaching out for them. The laughter flickered and faded, but always behind them, the sound almost mocking in its persistence. An ominous rustle came from just off the trail, a sound like something crawling through the brambles, and Sarah tightened her grip on Dave's hand, afraid to look in that direction. What if it finds us? Shoo! Dave hissed, as if lowering his voice could save them from whatever was pursuing them. But all he heard in response was the continuous growl, now layered with something distinctly unsettling, a whispering, almost human. A soft voice that seemed to know their fears, echoing through the night. Run, it beckoned. What if it's Ben? Sarah's heart fluttered, flipping from fear to hope. What if he's in trouble and needs our help? Or it could be a trap. He tugged her onward, pushing through the thickening shadows. Focus, Sarah. Ahead, the moon cast a silver glow across a clearing, its light spilling out like a lifeline. There. She pointed, excitement flaring, breath quickening. If we can just make it to the clearing. Just then, the ground trembled beneath them, and a figure emerged from the foliage. Not Ben, but a creature, tall and grotesque, its skin glistening like wet stone. Its contorted body twisted unnaturally, arms too long and limbs jutting from various angles. Hollow eyes pinched into a twisted smile that sent a surge of icy dread through Sarah. No! She screamed, pulling Dave back, but it was too late. The creature lunged at them, faster than anything should have been able to move through the underbrush. They dodged, rolling to the side as it crashed against a tree, the bark splintering under the force. Run! Dave shouted again, breathless and pained. They sprinted, heart rates synchronizing with their footfalls and the growl behind them, resonating with cold fury. Where's the exit? Sarah gasped, frantically scanning the impossible darkness, feeling claustrophobically closed in. Just ahead. Dave pointed, struggling to keep pace. The trees began to thin, and for a moment, they hoped until they stumbled upon a sight that twisted their stomachs with despair. Before them lay an ancient campsite, long abandoned, a skim of dust covering the soot-blackened fire pit. A rusted swing creaked mournfully in the faintest breeze. It felt wrong, like something from a fever dream. Ben! Sarah called, half-trapped in panic, but the air swallowed her voice. Why would someone leave this here? Dave murmured, glancing nervously at the surroundings. It feels wrong. Suddenly, the laughter rang out again, louder than before, cascading through the trees and settling into something grotesque. It was as if it came from every direction, mocking their plight, mocking their fear. And before they knew what was happening, figures emerged from the shadows, a ring of them, standing at the edge of the clearing, all mocking smiles and hollow eyes, an assembly of twisted echoes of their son. Ben, Sarah breathed, her heart plummeting as her blood turned to ice. Run! She screamed, terror boiling over as the entities edged closer. But the forest was alive around them, the very air crackled with malevolence, and as the first of them lunged, the darkness seemed to ignite. Would they make it out alive, or would they be swallowed whole by the shadows of Grizzly Ridge, joining the chorus of the vanished? The night was far from over, and the hunt had merely begun. Panic surged as the grotesque figures drew nearer, twisting their bodies in unnatural rhythms that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Each step they took echoed hopelessness, the mocking laughter now harmonizing into an eerie chorus, spiraling into her mind like a nightmare come to life. Ben! She cried out again, her voice pleading amidst the chaos, desperation dripping from each syllable. But there was no answer, only the cacophony of madness closing around them. "Back!" Dave shouted, pulling her towards the dilapidated tent at the corner of the campsite. It sagged like an old corpse, barely holding together under the overwhelming weight of gloom. They ducked inside, pulling the heavy flap down behind them, cocooning themselves in an almost suffocating darkness. "Did they see us?" Sarah panted, breath hitching as panic clawed at her throat. "I don't know," Dave whispered, peering through the tattered layers of fabric, heart pounding as he caught fleeting glimpses of those hollow-eyed figures pacing outside. They fanned out, surrounding the tent, their elongated shadows dancing violently against the flickering light of a distant star. "Why are they smiling?" she whimpered, hugging her knees to her chest. A sickening chill crept through her body, as if the very air had turned to ice. "Maybe because they're waiting," Dave murmured, dread settling into his voice. "For us to come out." The edges of the tent rumbled with a low growl, the trees themselves whispering secrets that had no business being spoken. They could feel it, the eerie energy thrumming just outside, alive and knowing. It pressed against the canvas walls, whispering promises of fear and dread. "What do we do now?" Sarah's voice quivered, fear threading through each word. Just stay quiet," he urged, though his own heart raced faster than he could control. They both took breaths that felt too loud in the stifling silence, like they were straining to hear through the walls of madness pressing around them. It was then that the shadows began to move as a unit, closing inwards with synchronized fluidity. One by one, they knelt as if in prayer, their hollow eyes staring into the abyss, each face twisted in a grotesque parody of not just smiles, but anguish. It sent ripples of terror coursing through both of them. Are they, Ben?" Sarah dared to whisper, terror clinging to her voice. The thought sank like a stone in her stomach, weighing heavy as she fought to keep her mind from spiraling. "No. They can't be." "They're wrong," Dave said, eyes wide, darting frantically around as if searching for an escape. But the tent felt more like a coffin than a refuge now. A sharp noise cut through the silence, a slashing sound, like claws raking through earth, sending a tremor of fear coursing between them. The figures outside began to chant, voices merging into a twisted melody that sent a shudder down their spines. It reverberated through the trees, stealing the very breath from the night. Suddenly, the ground shook violently beneath them. The tent flapped uncontrollably, as the chant rose to a fever pitch. Bits of dirt rained down from above, caught in the grip of something vast and unseen. Shadows elongated grotesquely, strobing with the frantic pulsing of a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. In that moment, an icy realization bloomed: those figures weren't waiting for them to come out. They were waiting for something far worse. "Get ready to run," Dave whispered, trembling, feeling the weight of that knowing pressing down fiercely. "We might not have a choice." And as the figures outside broke into a fit of maniacal laughter, their bodies contorting further, twisting into impossible forms, Sarah's heart dropped. They weren't just waiting to consume, they were anticipating their next move. The night stretched on, dark and relentless. With the shrill laughter reverberating in their ears, it became painfully clear what lay ahead. Would they break free from this terrible grip, or become part of an infinite cycle of terror meant to ensnare the lost souls of Grizzly Ridge? As the darkness loomed closer, there was only one thing left to do. What happened next would decide if they could outrun the shadows or if they would join those clutches of despair forever. The low chant rose, the words shifting into a maddening symphony that seemed to invade Sarah and Dave's minds, leaving behind an echo of despair. The figures outside moved as one entity, undulating grotesquely, each shift of their body a reminder of the reality they were in, a world that had abandoned reason. "It's like they can sense us," Sarah's voice trembled as she felt a cold sweat trickling down her back. "They might know we're in here, but we can't just sit here forever." Dave's voice was a harsh whisper against the rising tide of chaos outside. The ground cracked and groaned under the weight of unseen forces, trembling in tune with their fear. The laughter escalated, a cacophony that vibrated against the fabric of the tent, each note soaked in malice. "They're taunting us," Sarah realized, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, drowning in the haunting sound. What if Ben is with them? Her eyes widened with horror. What if she couldn't finish the thought? The implication hung heavy in the air, like a noose slowly tightening around her neck. "Shoo!" Dave hissed, pulling her close. "Focus, Sarah. We need a plan. If we wait too long, they'll figure out we're still here." The tent walls quivered as something slammed into them, a weight that sent chills racing down their spines. Dave instinctively turned towards the back, glancing for a possible escape, but the darkness there felt thicker, more oppressive. Suddenly, silence enveloped them. The chanting had stopped. The figures outside held their breath, the stillness pregnant with anticipation. "What are they waiting for?" Sarah whispered, eyes darting around the small tent, searching for anything that might help. She could feel the despair pooling in her gut, a cruel reminder that time was running out. "Whatever it is, we can't let them have it," Dave muttered, voice low and fierce. That was when they heard an almost imperceptible whispering from beneath them, layered over with pulses of energy that made their skin crawl. The ground vibrated again, but this time it felt like the heartbeat of the forest itself, an ominous reminder that they weren't alone. Before they could react, the bottom of the tent buckled inward, a gaping maw pulling them into darkness. They fell, the ground giving way beneath their feet, and as they tumbled into oblivion, Sarah felt a terrible grip pulling her down, dragging her deeper into the abyss. "Hold on!" Dave shouted, grasping her wrist just before the darkness swallowed them whole. A nauseating swirl of colors and shadows spun around them. Their bodies soon landed with a thud in a damp, cold space, the air thick with a fetid stench. Panic surged again as Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dim light. A twisted, underground chamber could be seen, thick roots snaking from the walls, the soil damp and warm. But it wasn't the eerie surroundings that made her breath hitch, it was the figure that stepped forward from the shadows, its face a twisted reflection of someone she knew. "Ben?" She gasped, disbelief gripping her heart. Yet the hollow eyes that met hers were not filled with familiarity, but a predatory hunger that made her skin crawl. "Welcome back," it rasped, words like poison, "we've been waiting for you." What happened to you?" Dave's voice cracked, fear churning his stomach. The figure smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth, and Sarah realized, with a terrible clarity, that whatever Ben had become was not what he once was. The pieces of their nightmare started to fall into place, connecting in a horrifying web of despair. They had stumbled upon something much more sinister than just monsters outside their tent. As the chanting rose up from the depths of the chamber, echoing against the walls, Sarah and Dave stood paralyzed, caught between their worst fears and the chilling reality of what lay ahead. "Dave," she breathed, "what if we can't escape this?" The shadows shifted, drawing closer, shadows upon shadows, and the flickering light highlighted their grinning faces. "We're going to fight," he whispered, determination flaring in his eyes. "But..." The ground below them rumbled again, echoing the laughter that surrounded them. As the figures closed in tighter, Sarah's heart raced with a new terror. Could they really fight against the insatiable darkness, or would they be consumed too? Would Ben save them or be the very thing that would end them? They were running out of time. The chamber grew colder, the darkness pressing against their skin like a living thing. Sarah shivered, her breath coming out in shallow puffs that mingled with the damp, earthy air. She could hear the low, pulsing chant again, a rhythm that resonated with the thud of her heart. Ben's smile widened, stretching unnaturally, as if the very act of revealing his teeth was a cruel mockery of their horror. "They want to see you. They want to feast on your fears." Dave squeezed Sarah's hand, his grip a lifeline amid the creeping dread. "What do you mean?" he demanded, forcing strength into his words, though the tremor betrayed him. "We aren't afraid of you." "No?" Ben's voice dripped with amusement. The shadows around him danced closer, dark forms drifting silently, feeding off the uncertainty. But fear is the sweetest delicacy. You're about to find out how wrong you are. Sarah fought the urge to retreat, but as the chanting gained intensity, the fear gnawed at her gut. She pulled herself back to the present, trying to assess their surroundings. The walls pulsed rhythmically, shadows twisting unsettlingly along the roots that crawled like fingers over the chamber's damp surfaces. Surely, there was a way out. There had to be. Then she noticed a faint glow to the left, nestled between two large roots. Over there. We need to go. She urged, adrenaline spiking through her. Dave nodded, but when he turned, Ben had blocked their path. His form flickered, shifting, almost like a smoky mirage. You think you can escape? The entity taunted, laughter echoing off the chamber walls, the sound thickening the already oppressive atmosphere. The other figures began to emerge from the shadows, their eyes beacons of hunger and malice. They spread out like a grotesque tapestry, silhouettes twisted into monstrous shapes, faces betraying a glee that sent chills racing down their spines. Quick! We have to move! Dave shouted, yanking Sarah's hand. They pushed toward the faint glow. The figures surged, a wave of darkness with claws and teeth glistening in the dim light, eager to close the distance. They dove towards the light, muscles straining against the cold air as panic drove them forward. Each pounding step echoed like thunder, the shapes closing in, laughter reverberating in their ears, a horrible concert of desperation. As they neared the glow, it expanded, revealing a slim opening in the wall, a passage filled with pulsating luminescence that felt wrong and inviting all at once. Should we? Sarah hesitated, eyeing the glowing passage. Doubt gnawed at her. What if it was a trap? We don't have a choice. Dave urged, his expression fierce and frantic. Behind them, the figures lunged forward, their horrid laughter a deafening blur. With a final glance back at Ben, whose hollow gaze bore into her soul, Sarah felt a surge of resolve. Okay. Together. They plunged into the light, the passage swallowing them whole. The laughter and chanting faded, replaced by a deafening silence so complete it was unsettling. But the pause didn't last long. The ground shifted beneath their feet, and as they stumbled deeper into the tunnel, the walls began to narrow, squeezing tighter around them. The air grew staler, the oppressive silence thickening, crackling with energy. Where are we going? Sarah panted. Down or maybe up? I don't know. Dave shouted, panic rising in his tone. Do you think we lost them? Before he could answer, a rumbling emerged from ahead, low and menacing, vibrating the ground beneath them. The glow dimmed, and shadows danced along the walls once more, growing darker, more pronounced. A voice, deep and echoing, resonated from the shadows. You cannot escape, you belong to us now. Their breath hitched. The laughter surged back, louder and more powerful, and shadows leapt forth from the walls, twisting into monstrous forms poised to strike. As they pressed onward, the walls closed in, but what lay ahead remained uncertain, a dark promise of more evil lurking. Could they find safety, or would their journey end in a nightmare deeper than they could fathom? And there, in the heart of the tunnel, they realized, sometimes it's better to embrace the darkness instead of running from it. What awaited them at the end of the passage? Would it offer salvation or a new kind of horror? They stumbled through the tunnel, breaths ragged, hearts racing. Each step felt like a descent into the abyss, the unforgiving walls squeezing tighter around them, as if the passage itself wanted to consume them. Shadows flickered, becoming erratic in the dim light, twisting like fingers stretching out to grab hold. Did you hear that? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, laced with panic. She pivoted, half expecting a dark form to leap out, but all she saw were the relentless shadows. Dave turned back as they hurried, his eyes wide and wild. What if we're walking into a trap? We might. A loud crash reverberated through the air, making them jump. The ground below them shook violently, almost swallowing their feet whole. Echoes of sinister laughter ricocheted through the narrow passage, filling the air with a chilling crescendo that set their nerves ablaze. "Run!" Dave urged, practically dragging her along as they sprinted down the dark tunnel, maneuvering around sharp corners that seemed to close in on them. The glow ahead was their only beacon, pulsating as if alive, beckoning them closer. With every step, the air grew heavier, a thick miasma of dread surrounding them. They could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, hungry and eager. The laughter intensified again, mocking them. It felt as if the walls themselves were alive, twisting and contorting in delight at their fear. "Why can't we just find a way out?" Sarah urged, tearing her gaze away from the shadows that tumbled and twisted. "There has to be a door or something. It'll be fine," Dave shouted, covering her words with an urgency that felt unreal. Yet even his voice cracked, betraying the fear that lurked just beneath the surface. "We'll find a way to escape." But escape felt elusive, like chasing smoke. As they dashed on, the passage twisted, turning right, then left, deeper into the heart of whatever nightmare lay ahead. Suddenly, the glow ahead dimmed to a sullen trickle, the warm light now a foreboding shimmer. Every instinct told them to halt, to reconsider, but they had no choice. What pursued them pressed ever closer. "Please, just a little farther," Dave gasped. But then the glow flickered like a dying ember, leaving only a haunting darkness. The walls constricted, forcing them to the brink of claustrophobia. "Get ready!" Sarah cried, but as they leaped forward, the ground trembled again. A fissure appeared beneath them, splitting the earth and opening like a wound, and a twisted hand shot out from the darkness below, fingers clawing at the air. "Get!" Dave tried to shout, but before he could finish, the room plunged inky blackness. They were swallowed whole, falling into a depth so fathomless they could barely scream. The sensation was disorienting. Freefall turned to sudden impact. They landed amidst a chill, damp ground, surrounded by shadows that coiled and writhed closer. Dizzy, Sarah blinked against the dark, struggling to orient herself as she steadied her breathing. "Dave? Are you here?" Yeah, I'm fine." His voice floated from somewhere behind her. "But where are we?" "Somewhere worse, I think." She felt the cold creeping up her spine, frigid fingers brushing against her skin. The oppressive weight of silence wrapped around her, and she knew something sinister lurked just beyond where she could see. Suddenly, that same deep voice resonated again, as chilling as before. "You can never leave, not until your fear has been devoured." Then they felt it, an unexpected rush, a presence drawing near that made the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. The shapes began to coalesce, forming grotesque figures, unsure in their intent but certain in their hunger. Sarah held her breath, twisting around in a desperate search for an escape. Were they trapped in this nightmare forever, or was there still a flicker of hope? The darkness seemed to chuckle as they exchanged terrified glances, urging them to confront whatever horror loomed. Together they had to make a decision: face the darkness, or risk becoming a part of it. As those malicious eyes glistened in the shadows, a horrible realization dawned. What lay ahead was not just survival, but an inevitable reckoning. Would they uncover a way to escape these horrors, or would they succumb to their own fears? What awaited them in the heart of this cold darkness was a brand new nightmare entirely. The shadows moved closer, swirling like a mist given life. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she squinted, trying to decipher the shapes that loomed just outside her periphery. Each figure twisted unnaturally, limbs elongated grotesquely, dripping with an unfathomable dread. She dared not blink, terrified that the moment she looked away, they would pounce. "Dave," she rasped, her voice shaky yet desperate enough to bridge the distance. "We need to find a way out. I can't stay here." "Right." Dave's voice trembled with resolve, though it fell flat against the overwhelming terror surrounding them. "There has to be something. A path, a sign, anything." As they stood frozen in fear, the mocking laughter returned, shrill and echoing, piercing through the thick silence. The figures swayed, as if in rhythm with that haunting symphony of chaos, feeding on every flicker of their panic. Fear surged within Sarah, igniting a primal urge to run. She took a tentative step back, her instinct screaming to flee. "This way," she urged, moving cautiously toward an uncertain darkness that seemed less threatening than the figures before them. "Wait." Dave grabbed her wrist, pulling her back just as a shadow lunged forward, a clawed hand darting towards them. They stumbled apart as the hand passed through empty air, only to dissipate back into the darkness with a hiss of disappointment. "Did you see that?" Sarah gasped, her heart racing. "It just vanished." Dave's eyes widened. "This isn't just any nightmare, is it? It's like they're toying with us. They want to scare us," she whispered urgently. That voice said something about fear being devoured. "We can't let them do that." But the cold seeped deeper into their bones, the darkness swirling like a storm closing in on them. With every passing moment, the shadows thrummed with anticipation, the laughter morphing into whispers that echoed their deepest insecurities, fears they had buried long ago. "Sarah, listen," Dave started, but the words failed him, lost to the chaos around. Suddenly, the shadows parted, revealing a narrow passageway illuminated by a soft, eerie glow. It flickered with an ethereal light, enticing them, whispering promises of safety. Yet was it a trap? "Should we?" Sarah hesitated, her instincts firing wildly. The laughter dimmed, but the weight of malevolent eyes remained, pressing down with suffocating intensity. "Do we have a choice?" Dave's desperation seeped through. "We can't stay here. They're playing with us. We need to go now." Without waiting for an answer, he took her hand, plunging them both headfirst into the glowing passage. The air shifted, growing warmer as they hastened toward the light, yet the laughter followed, echoing back into a discordant roar that shook the very ground beneath them. Just as they neared the end, movement in the shadows flickered again, darting toward them like an arrow. The figures were regrouping, tightening their noose around the survivors. "Faster!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline pumping through her limbs, propelling them forward. They leapt into the glow, bursting forth into a vast chamber bathed in an unsettling luminescence. Their eyes adjusted, and horror struck. The walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting countless versions of their terrified selves. It was as if their worst fears were being played out in infinite loops. Sarah gasped as she sunk to the cold floor, drawn into the sprawling madness of her deepest anxieties laid bare before her. "Dave," she couldn't finish her thought. The sight overwhelmed her, the reflection of torment blurring her sense of self. But an even darker flicker caught her attention. In the corner of the chamber, shrouded in shadows, there loomed a figure far larger than the others. It grinned, teeth sharp and eyes filled with a ravenous hunger. "No," Dave whispered, stepping beside her. "This can't be happening. We have to fight. We can't give in to this." But their resolve felt fragile against the waves of despair washing over them. Sarah's heart pounded as she looked up again, the figure moving closer, the grotesque mouth curling with anticipation. "Either you flee or stay and succumb to the void," it taunted, voice dripping with malice. Through the chaos of terror, a new question arose: how could they defeat what fed off their very souls? As the figure stretched out a hand, beckoning them into eternal darkness, Sarah knew the next move would define their fate. Would they face their fears head-on, or would they allow themselves to be pulled under? The weight of their decision loomed heavily, and the darkness waited, hungry. Just as the figure's hand reached out, twisting through the air like a serpent seeking its prey, something inside Sarah ignited. She couldn't back down. Not now. With a surge of willpower, she grabbed Dave's hand tighter, their palms cold and clammy against each other, an anchor in the rising tide of dread. "Don't look at it," she urged, her voice barely louder than a whisper above the cacophony of their disembodied fears playing out in the mirrors. "We have to focus on each other." Dave nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his eyes. The mirrored reflections of their forms morphed grotesquely, distorting their faces into masks of horror, every step they took casting unholy images in the glass. But Sarah forced herself to breathe, to calculate a plan amidst the chaos. With a sudden impulse, she turned her back on the looming figure, dragging Dave with her towards what seemed to be a random part of the chamber, a segment where the mirrors appeared less intact. Perhaps they were just as fragile as her own courage. "Keep moving," Dave shouted, his voice bold now, matching her determination. They ran, feeling the ground tremble beneath their feet. The laughter dimmed momentarily, replaced by angry hisses, and the figure's silhouette lurked behind them, anger echoing in the shadows it summoned. But just as they neared one of the less reflective sections, a deafening crash echoed through the chamber. One of the mirrors shattered, sharp shards flying outward like lethal confetti, embedding themselves into the dark floor, glinting maliciously. Sarah narrowly avoided one as it ricocheted past her face. "Go, go, go!" Dave yelled again, the urgency in his tone pushing them toward the other mirrors, each shattered reflection flickering wildly, showing brief glimpses of their past fears, failed dreams, lost loved ones, harrowing moments they wished to forget. The horror seared into Sarah's mind, threatening to pull her into a pit of despair. Then, a sharp pain shot through her shoulder. Time slowed as she turned to see Dave clutching at her ragged pant leg, his face twisted in agony. "Sarah, I can't," he gasped, eyes glistening with unshed tears. A reflection of himself appeared in the smooth mirror behind him, one that was taunting, one that showed his deepest insecurities: failure, loneliness, despair. "I'm not leaving you." She pulled at him with every ounce of strength she could muster, but felt the weight of that other self yank back, tearing at Dave's mind, pulling him into a web of dark doubt. "No. Fight it!" Sarah screamed, her voice rising above the storm of despair surrounding them. "You're stronger than this. We're stronger together." As the mirage of doubt surged and twisted around him, Dave's eyes met hers. In that brief moment, Sarah saw the flicker of recognition, the realization that they could push back against the shadow that sought to subdue them. Slowly, he rose on shaky legs, drawing closer to her, a light breaking through the heavy darkness. The laughter faltered, a wave of discontent washing over the figures lurking in the corners. "You cannot resist forever," the larger figure spat, its eyes narrowing with unfathomable hunger. Just then, Sarah shouted, "What if we confront it?" She hesitated, and then grabbed Dave tightly, pulling him closer. "What if we turn our fear into strength?" With a shared glance, they faced the monstrous figure. Heart racing, they began to chant instead of screaming or crying out in terror, they spoke their fears out loud. "I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of being alone. I'm scared of what I might become." Each confession stripped the shadows of their power, revealing their truths. The chamber shook as their honesty bridged a gap between their mounting dread and the dark entity. The figure stumbled, momentarily halted by their words. "What are you doing?" It rasped, the hunger in its eyes momentarily flickering. But suddenly, a mirror burst with a crash behind them, darkness pouring out like a dam bursting open. "Dave!" Sarah shouted, tightening her grip as the figures lunged towards them. The chaos was closing in. Now or never. They both took a step forward, boldness simmering in their veins. The figure's expression froze, caught between surprise and rage. This was a defining moment. They could surrender or, together, fight for their souls. As they held each other's gaze, the ground beneath shifted once more. The shadows pulsed with malice, an unmistakable sense of urgency weaving through the air. "Now!" Dave shouted, lunging forward, ready to shatter the illusion that bound them. With a brave heart, they charged toward the looming figure, ready to turn the tide. Would they shatter the darkness or be consumed? The air crackled with uncertainty, and as they approached, the fate of their existence hung in a fragile balance. What lay beyond the figure might just be the salvation they desperately sought or the final step into the abyss. In that moment, as they surged towards the malevolent figure, a surge of hope intertwined with the fear coursing through Sarah's veins. The shadows danced frantically around them, voices rising in a cacophony urging them to retreat, but they pressed on. They could feel the darkness swirling against them, a cold wind trying to push them back, but their resolve was fierce. Together. Sarah shouted, the word a battle cry that echoed through the chamber, a declaration that they wouldn't yield to despair. We are stronger than this. With every step, each crushed fragment of darkened glass beneath their feet pulsed with a low hum, resonating in harmony with their hearts. They felt the very weight of the dark figure's hunger pressing against them, an intangible force that wanted to siphon every ounce of light from their souls. Yet, instead of yielding, they leaned into the truth they had shared. I won't be afraid of losing anymore. Dave shouted, his voice rising above the whirlwind of laughter and screams that filled the chamber. The dark figure's eyes widened, a fleeting moment of surprise rippling through its shadowy form. A fissure of hesitation replaced the anger, confusion flashing momentarily in the hollow depths of its gaze. Sarah felt it. A gap. An opening. You don't control us, she cried out, more confident now. We are not your prey. As they approached the figure, the air thickened with tension, the shadows cowering back slightly, as if threatened by the light they had ignited within themselves. Sarah reached for Dave's hand, gripping it tightly, her heartbeat synchronizing with his as a flare of warmth pulsed through their entwined fingers. They launched themselves forward together, blades of confidence carving through the smog of despair that filled the chamber. The entity, its form twisting, lunged at them, a snarled visage of rage. But this time, they didn't flinch. With a final scream of unity, they shouted the fears they had confronted, letting them spill out like sunlight piercing through storm clouds. We are not afraid of our past. We're not afraid of pain. The force of their words sent shockwaves through the air. Just as the figure lunged, darkness started to fragment, the shadows swelling and retracting like waves against the shore, revealing a light the pulsing glow from before but now brighter, undulating with a warmth that felt inviting, a promise of safety wrapped in hope. The figure screamed, a harsh noise that resonated through the chamber, but it was swallowed by the shattering sound of mirrors breaking, one after another, unleashing waves of reflective light. The larger shadow recoiled, disintegrating into swirling wisps, lost amidst the shards of broken illusions. The ground trembled violently as the walls began to shift, the chamber collapsing in on itself. Run! Dave yelled, eyes blazing with determination. They sprinted toward the warmth, the light growing stronger as the shadows disbanded, their weight lifted from Sarah and Dave's shoulders like a heavy fog dispersing. They grasped each other's hand tightly, guiding each other through the cascading chaos, dodging shards of shadow that sought to catch them. Each step resonated with their defiance, shattering the remnants of fear that had once threatened to engulf them. With every stride, a path drenched in light unfolded before them as they dashed through the chaos of their nightmares. And then, just as they felt the encroaching darkness fading, they burst out of the tunnel and into the open air. The sky was a deep, comforting blue canvas, kissed by the orange glow of the setting sun. Grizzly Ridge loomed behind them, now merely a shadowy backdrop to their triumph. As they collapsed onto the damp earth just outside the forest's edge, breaths ragged but spirits high, Sarah and Dave let the warmth of the sun wash over them. Did we make it? Sarah whispered, disbelief and relief flooding through her. Dave's smile was wide, a glimmer of joy against the backdrop of their frightening ordeal. We did. We faced it and we won. They embraced, overwhelmed with emotions, joy, fear, relief. The sweet taste of freedom washed over them. In that moment of catharsis, as they sat together, they both sensed Grizzly Ridge's secrets would remain cloistered in its shadows. But there was no longer a need to fear them. They had faced the darkness together and emerged unscathed, perhaps even stronger. As the sun dipped closer to the horizon, Sarah turned to Dave, a smile breaking across her lips. And Ben, do you think he is okay? I believe he will be, Dave replied, squeezing her hand. There's always a light, even in the darkest places. It just takes a little courage to find it. Hope blossomed like the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, filling the quiet void with possibilities. Sarah felt her heart swell with gratitude. They had faced down their fears, uncertain yet resilient. And together, they forged a new path illuminated by courage and love. So as they settled into the twilight, ready to venture back into the world, they knew one thing: they would never turn back toward the shadows, for they had learned the true strength that resided within. And they would carry that light with them, shining bright against any darkness that dared to cross their path. Now it's time for you, dear listeners, to carry this message onward. If you were captivated by this journey and want to see more tales unfold, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. Don't delay. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your thoughts. We want to hear every reaction, every theory about what happens next. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion and celebrate the power of conquering fears. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your engagement is invaluable.